I was 28 years old, working as a marketing coordinator in Denver, and I had spent 3 months planning what I thought would be the perfect 55th birthday celebration for my mom. $3,000 of my savings had gone into every detail: the Garden Terrace restaurant reservation, a live acoustic band, a custom cake from the city's most renowned bakery, fresh floral arrangements, and even a professional photographer. Everything was set for the woman I loved most in this world. But then I received a text message from my father that would change absolutely everything. Before I dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching. From Drop Your City, in the comments below, hit that like button if you are ready for some serious family drama, and do not forget to subscribe, because trust me, you will not want to miss how this one unfolds. This is about to get very real, very fast. My relationship with my mother, Margaret, had always been the strongest bond in my life. Growing up, it was often just the two of us while my father, Richard, buried himself in his law practice. Mom was the one who taught me to cook her famous chocolate chip pancakes on Sunday mornings. She drove me to piano lessons every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 years, sitting patiently in the waiting room with a book. When I decided to study marketing instead of law, like my father wanted, she was the one who defended my choice at countless family dinners. My father, on the other hand, had always been a different story entirely. Richard was the kind of man who measured success in billable hours and corner offices. He spoke in legal terms, even at the breakfast table, and had this way of making you feel like you were being cross-examined whenever you shared good news. Nothing I ever did seemed to meet his standards. When I graduated college with honors, he asked why I had not applied to law school. When I got promoted to senior coordinator, he wondered aloud why I was not already a manager. Then there was my older brother Marcus, 32 years old, and everything my father had ever dreamed of in a son. Marcus had followed the predetermined path perfectly. Law degree from the same university, as Dad joined the same firm, bought a house in the same upscale neighborhood. He was the golden child who could do absolutely no wrong in my father's eyes. Growing up, I used to joke that Marcus could probably rob a bank, and Dad would find a way to praise his strategic thinking. The idea for Mom's surprise birthday party had come to me back in January. I wanted to show her how much she meant to me, but honestly, I also wanted to prove something to my father. I wanted to demonstrate that I could organize something meaningful and beautiful, something that would make our family proud. So I started planning with the dedication of someone preparing for the most important presentation of their career. I spent weeks researching venues before settling on the Garden Terrace, an elegant restaurant overlooking the city with floor-to-ceiling windows and the most incredible sunset views. The deposit alone was $500, but I knew Mom would love the ambiance. I interviewed 3 different bands before choosing a local acoustic trio that specialized in songs from the 70s and 80s, all of Mom's favorite decades. The custom cake was going to be a work of art decorated with edible flowers and featuring a collage of family photos spanning 5 decades. I had even reached out to Mom's closest friends from her teaching days, coordinating schedules months in advance to ensure everyone could attend. The guest list included her former principal, her book club members, and several neighbors who had become like family over the years. Every single detail had been carefully planned and paid for with money I had been saving for a down payment on my own place. The excitement I felt during those months of planning was unlike anything I had experienced before. I would lie awake at night picturing Mom's face when she walked into that beautifully decorated room filled with everyone she cared about. I imagined her tears of joy the way she would hug me and tell me it was the most wonderful surprise she had ever received. I fantasized about my father finally acknowledging that I had done something truly special. Everything started to unravel exactly 1 week before the big day. I had called my father on a Tuesday evening to share the exciting news about the party I had been planning. I was practically bursting with pride as I described each element of the celebration: the restaurant, the band, the cake, the guest list. I expected him to be impressed, maybe even a little proud of my organizational skills and thoughtfulness. Instead, his voice turned cold and distant. I did not know you were organizing anything, Sophia. Marcus already planned something for your mother's birthday. The words hit me like ice water. I felt my stomach drop as I tried to process what he was telling me. How could Marcus have planned something when I had been working on this for 3 months? How had no one mentioned this to me before now? I tried to explain that I had already committed significant money and time to the celebration. I told him about the deposits that could not be refunded and the vendors who were counting on our business. But my father's response was swift and cutting. Marcus is a lawyer, Sophia. He understands how to organize sophisticated events that reflect well on our family. Your mother deserves something more appropriate. That word appropriate stung more than I wanted to admit. What exactly was inappropriate about a beautiful dinner party with live music and a custom cake? What was inappropriate about wanting to celebrate the most wonderful woman in our family? I suggested that perhaps we could combine our efforts, or maybe organize 2 separate celebrations. But Dad was not interested in compromise. The next day, Marcus called me with what I can only describe as barely concealed condescension in his voice. Dad told me about your little party idea, he said, and I could practically hear the eye roll. We need something more sophisticated than whatever you have planned. Dad's colleagues will be there. As the conversation continued, I learned the devastating truth about Marcus's so-called sophisticated plan. He had made a simple dinner reservation at the country club for immediate family and a handful of Dad's law partners. No band, no special cake, no decorations, no friends from Mom's teaching career. Just a standard Tuesday night dinner in the same stuffy dining room where they held every mundane business dinner. I felt my blood pressure rising as Marcus explained how my plans were unnecessarily elaborate and probably not something Mom would even enjoy. You always try to show off with money you do not even have, he said with a laugh that made my skin crawl. Mom is a simple person. She does not need all this flashy nonsense. The accusation about money particularly stung because it was not true. I had saved every penny for the celebration, cutting back on my own expenses for months. I had skipped dinners out with friends, avoided shopping trips, and even canceled a weekend vacation to afford this party. This was not about showing off. This was about love and gratitude and wanting to create a magical memory for someone who had given me everything. When I called Mom directly to explain the situation, hoping she would understand and support what I had planned, her response broke my heart in ways I was not prepared for. She seemed flustered and uncomfortable admitting that she knew about both plans. "Honey," she said in that gentle voice she used when she was trying to let me down easy, "maybe it is better if we just keep it simple this year. You know how your father gets about these things." For the first time, I began to understand that this was not really about competing party plans. This was about something much deeper and more painful. This was about my place in this family and whether my contributions were valued or even wanted. The woman I had spent 3 months trying to honor was choosing the simple, boring dinner over the celebration I had poured my heart and savings into. 3 days before Mom's birthday, I was sitting at my desk at work trying to focus on a client presentation when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my father, sent at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon. I will never forget the words that appeared on my screen because they changed everything. "Sophia, after talking with your mother and Marcus, we have decided you should not come to your mother's birthday dinner. Your dramatic planning has caused unnecessary stress for everyone involved. Frankly, no one wants you there anyway. You have always been a total failure at understanding what really matters to this family." I stared at that message until the words blurred together. I read it again, then a third time, convinced I must have misunderstood something. But there it was, in plain black and white text. My father had just told me that I was not welcome at my own mother's birthday celebration. More than that, he had called me a total failure and claimed that no one in my family wanted me there. The phrase total failure kept echoing in my mind like a broken record. 28 years of trying to earn his approval, 28 years of feeling like I was never quite good enough, and now I had my answer. In his eyes, I was not just inadequate. I was a complete and utter failure who caused stress simply by existing in the same space as my family. My hands were shaking as I tried to call my mother, desperate to hear her voice, hoping she would tell me this was all a misunderstanding. But the call went straight to voicemail, and suddenly I realized that she was probably avoiding me on purpose. She had participated in this decision. The woman who had raised me, who had supposedly loved me unconditionally, had agreed that I should not be present for her own birthday celebration. I called Marcus next, clinging to some desperate hope that he would shed light on what was happening. His response was swift and brutal. "Dad is right, Sophia. You are just causing drama as usual. We want a peaceful evening without your theatrics." Theatrics. That is what he called 3 months of careful planning and $3,000 of genuine love and effort. Theatrics. I hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence, feeling like I had been physically assaulted. My coworkers were starting to notice something was wrong, but I could not even begin to explain what had just happened to me. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every family interaction from the past few months, looking for signs I had missed. Had they been planning this rejection all along? Had they been laughing about my party plans behind my back? How long had they been discussing my failures as a daughter and sister? By morning, something had shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, raw and deep, but it was joined by something else: anger, clarity, and a cold, calculated determination to show them exactly what they had just thrown away. I picked up my phone and typed a response to my father's cruel message. "So cash matters more than your kid? Fine. Since I am such a failure, I guess you will not need my contributions to make this perfect." I did not elaborate. I did not explain what I was about to do. I simply hit send and then began making the most satisfying series of phone calls of my entire life. The first call was to the garden terrace. I spoke with Maria, the event coordinator, who had been working with me for weeks. "I am so sorry, Maria, but due to a family emergency, we need to cancel our reservation for 30 people this Saturday evening." Maria was understanding and professional, explaining that according to their policy, the $500 deposit was non-refundable since we were canceling within 72 hours of the event. I assured her that I completely understood and that the deposit was not a problem. What I did not tell her was that losing that money felt like the most liberating $500 I had ever spent. Next, I called the acoustic band. The leader, a kind man named David, who had been excited about performing Mom's favorite songs, was disappointed but understanding when I explained we were canceling. Their contract also included a non-refundable deposit of $200 for last-minute cancellations. Again, I accepted the loss without hesitation. The custom cake from Sweetfield Bakery was next on my list. They had already begun work on the elaborate design featuring edible sugar flowers and the photo collage I had carefully curated. The owner, Susan, was sympathetic but firm about their cancellation policy. Another $150 that I would never see again, and I had never felt better about losing money in my life. I called the photographer, a talented woman named Jennifer, who specialized in family celebrations. She had been looking forward to capturing what I had described as a very special milestone birthday. The $300 deposit was gone, but Jennifer's genuine concern for my well-being almost made me cry. She was the first person that day to ask if I was okay, which said everything about the difference between chosen relationships and family obligations. The floral arrangements were last. I had ordered beautiful centerpieces featuring white roses and eucalyptus, Mom's favorite combination. The florist was already in the process of preparing them, which meant another $200 loss. By the time I finished that call, I had forfeited over $1,300 in deposits, but I felt more empowered than I had in years. Each phone call felt like removing a weight from my shoulders. With every vendor I released, I was taking back control of my own life and my own money. I was refusing to let my family benefit from my hard work and financial sacrifice while simultaneously rejecting and insulting me. 2 days later, my phone started ringing. The first call was from Marcus, and his voice was tight with panic. "What did you do, Sophia?" "The restaurant called Dad asking about some confusion with the reservation. They said you canceled everything." I kept my voice steady and calm. "I thought you did not want my dramatic planning, Marcus. I was just trying to avoid causing any more stress for the family." "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "You cannot just cancel everything because your feelings are hurt." "Actually," I replied, "I can cancel anything that I paid for with my own money. Is not that how ownership works? I thought you would understand that concept, being a lawyer and all." An hour later, my father called, his voice full of the righteous indignation I had heard so many times before. "This is completely childish, Sophia. You are sabotaging your mother's birthday because you did not get your way." I let him finish his lecture before responding. "I am not sabotaging anything, Dad. I'm just making sure my failure does not contaminate your perfect family event. Is not that what you wanted?" "You know that is not what I meant," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Actually, Dad, that is exactly what you meant. You told me I was a total failure and that no one wanted me there. So I made sure you would not have to deal with any of my contributions either. Problem solved." The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in my life, my father had no legal argument, no clever comeback, no way to make me the villain in this story. He had created this situation with his own cruelty, and now he was facing the consequences. But the call that mattered most came that evening. Mom finally reached out, her voice thick with tears. "Honey, I am so sorry. I did not know they were going to say those horrible things to you. I never wanted you to be hurt like this." For the first time since this nightmare began, I heard genuine remorse and love in someone's voice. My mother explained that she had been feeling pressured by Dad and Marcus to go along with their plan, that she had been afraid of causing conflict by speaking up for what she really wanted. "I loved your party plans, sweetheart," she admitted through her tears. "The restaurant sounded beautiful, and I was so excited about hearing live music again. I was proud of how much thought you put into everything." That conversation lasted for over an hour. We talked about years of family dynamics that had never been addressed, about the way Dad had always favored Marcus, about the pressure we both felt to keep the peace, even when it meant sacrificing our own happiness. By the end of that call, we had made a new plan. Just the two of us would have dinner at a quiet little bistro across town on her birthday. No stuffy country club, no business associates, no condescending brother or cruel father. Just a mother and daughter celebrating together the way we should have been allowed to do all along. Mom's actual birthday turned out to be one of the most beautiful evenings we had shared in years. We went to Cafe Luna, a cozy little bistro with warm lighting and the most incredible pasta dishes in the city. We sat at a corner table talking and laughing like we had not done since I was a teenager. She told me stories about her early years as a teacher that I had never heard before. I shared my dreams about maybe starting my own marketing consultancy someday, something I had been afraid to mention to the rest of the family because it seemed too ambitious, too risky for someone they already saw as a failure. For the first time, Mom opened up about her marriage and how difficult it had been to watch Dad treat me differently than Marcus over the years. She apologized for not standing up for me more often, for choosing peace over protection when I needed her advocacy most. "I was proud of you for standing up for yourself," she said as we shared a piece of tiramisu for dessert. "It took courage to walk away from people who were not treating you with respect, even when those people were your own family." Meanwhile, according to what I learned later from family friends, Dad and Marcus's sophisticated dinner party was turning into exactly the disaster they deserved. The country club dining room was nearly empty since most people had assumed they were still invited to my original party. The few law colleagues who did show up seemed confused about the timing and the casual atmosphere. Without any decorations, music, or celebration atmosphere, it felt more like a random Tuesday dinner than a milestone birthday party. Mom's teacher friends, who had been looking forward to reconnecting with her for months, were left wondering why they had never received invitations to what they thought was still happening. Marcus called me the next morning, his voice a mixture of frustration and what might have been the beginnings of regret. The whole evening felt wrong, Sophia. Mom kept looking at the door like she was waiting for someone to arrive. Maybe she was waiting for her daughter, I suggested quietly. Maybe she was, he admitted after a long pause. Dad never apologized directly, but I did receive a brief text message a few days later. Perhaps we could have handled things differently. For him, that was practically a formal written apology. But the real victory was not in their discomfort or regret. The real victory was in what I had discovered about myself during that terrible week. I learned that I could choose to walk away from situations that diminished my worth, even when walking away was painful and expensive. I learned that sometimes protecting your own dignity requires setting boundaries that other people will not understand or appreciate. Most importantly, I learned that love should never require you to accept disrespect or cruelty. Real love, the kind I felt from Mom during our quiet dinner together, celebrates your efforts rather than dismissing them. Real love does not call you a failure and then expect you to keep showing up with a smile. The $1,300 I lost in deposits was not really lost at all. It was invested in a lesson about self-worth that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. It was the price of learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept treatment that makes you feel small. I still have a complicated relationship with my father and brother, but it is now a relationship built on clearer boundaries and mutual respect, rather than my desperate need for approval. They learned that my contributions have value and that rejecting those contributions comes with real consequences. Mom and I are closer now than we have ever been, bonded by honesty and a shared commitment to prioritizing genuine love over family politics. We have dinner together at least once a month, just the two of us celebrating the relationship that matters most. Sometimes, the most expensive lesson is not about the money you lose, but about the respect you gain for yourself. And you know what? That $3,000 was the best investment I ever made in learning who truly deserves a place at my table. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family loyalty and self-respect? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about knowing their worth, please share this video with them. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve to be celebrated, not tolerated. Until next time, keep standing up for yourselves.